Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's virtual program, From Handshake to Impact, Elevating Donor Relationships with Colton Withers. I am Brittany Spillman, and I have the privilege of serving as the director of the Cary Center Community and Collegiate Programs. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who make programs like this possible. Our presenting sponsor for today is the Walker Area Community Foundation, a nonprofit grant-making organization that works every day to build permanent resources, spark meaningful conversations, inspire action, and empower partners to make a difference. We are also grateful to our community and collegiate program sponsors, Auburn University Outreach, the Kim and Tim Hudson Endowed Fund for Excellence, Auburn University Outreach Office of Public Service, the Drummond Thorne Stooks Endowed Fund for Excellence, and a community service grant made possible by State Representative Joe Lovern. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Colton Withers believes great donor relations isn't just about saying thank you. It's about creating meaningful connections that inspire generosity. At the Donor Relations Group, he helps nonprofit organizations design and deliver donor relations strategies that drive fundraising success. Known for making complex ideas easy to understand, Colton ensures attendees leave his presentations with practical knowledge and clear steps for implementation. Before joining the Donor Relations Group, Colton served as the Associate Director of Purdue Musical Organizations, leading its external relations team in donor relations, communications, and marketing, as well as operations. He first discovered his passion for donor relations as the Director of Development, where nearly every gift visit started with a donor relations question. Colton received his master's from Indiana University's Lilly Family School of Philanthropy and proudly maintains a certified fundraising executive credential. Please join me in welcoming Colton Withers.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany, for that wonderful introduction. For those of you that have not had your bio read, it is a uniquely cringing, as the kids would say, experience. But I'm so happy to be here with you today. I dropped it in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and I do need to know whether you like candy corn or not. I am on the team candy corn line, but the fall brings out the controversial in us all. Hot take, I don't like pumpkin pie, but I do like candy corn. So that's what's on my mind today. And I'm looking forward. Yuck. Okay. I mean, I get it. I get it. No candy corn. No, I get it. I get it. So this is obviously the most important topic of the day. But I just want to get you guys active in the chat. I am pretty good at reading, and if you have any questions, please do drop them in there. I'd be happy to answer them live for you. And then, of course, we'll have some time at the end of our presentation for questions as well. Caramel apple cake, Catilla. I've never had that, but and some of these places I've been in Alabama, y'all, I have been many a summer at Gulf Shore, so I've seen a part of the country on the way. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, so just up the road on 65 from you. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you and keep up the chat. It's fun for me, and you'll get more out of it as well. So, Brittany gave a wonderful introduction that covered all of my professional history, but I am a recovering major gift fundraiser. Why do I say that? Because that took a lot out of me. And I realized that much more enjoyed the donor relations part of it. And what we mean by that at the donor relations group is everything but the ask. So that is 95% of a donor's life cycle is outside of the asking. And that's what we handle at the donor relations group. I'm a lover of the arts, and I've actually served on a few nonprofit boards. I brought one with an annual budget when I started, y'all. It was 100,000, and I texted the executive director the other day. My term of service, my tour of duty is done, and we brought that up to 500,000. So that was a fun part of the journey. But I've been on small boards where I'm the worker bee. I worked with multinational organizations. So hopefully you find yourself in what I'm going to be sharing today. That's the goal, is that you take something away to take back to your shops. I know you guys are incredibly busy, so I'll try to make this as practical and tactical as I can. That fourth bullet there, hot take again. You thought it was just going to be candy corn and pumpkin pie? No. I believe that most nonprofits have enough donors. And that's not just my perception or feeling. Penelope Burke, author of Donor Center Fundraising, she shared this in a keynote years ago with where I was lucky enough to attend, and it stuck with me because I believe it too. We have enough donors. There is enough generosity in the world, but we are not engaging with them meaningfully enough. And whatever we do at the Donor Relations Group, it's all about bottom line fundraising through relationships because we know that relationships matter and we also know that they matter to the bottom line. So everything we do is positioned in a value additive relationship where people naturally want to give more. They feel so connected and engaged with your mission and vision that when they get those number 9 envelope mailers that we all send this time of year, they're joyfully opening them and excited to get to make that gift. And I'm naturally curious. So if I don't have an answer to a question you've posed, I'll ask you for your email and I'd be happy to follow up with you directly. It'll give me an opportunity to learn something new. But over the course of doing this work for 15 years, there isn't a lot I haven't heard. But hey, I'm always open to a learning opportunity. So let's dive in today. We'll start with a little theoretical exercise. I'm turning my head over to the chat because I want to see your guys' hot takes. But imagine if you got 250,000 new donors in 1 month. You got 250,000 brand new first time donors. What's your reaction to that? Faint. Karen, I'm with you. Thank you, Jesus. Absolutely. Overwhelmed, fainting, ecstatic,
Hey, hey, Chris.
grateful,
Chris, are you available for me to call you this afternoon? Okay.
crying. Diane is crying. I am with you. Are they tears of joy, Diane? Elizabeth is getting carpal tunnel from all the thank you notes.
Definitely joy. Definitely joy.
Definitely joy,
Definitely
Diane.
joy.
Thank
Yes.
you. Oh, good. Where do I even start? Thrilled, but you have a list. Yeah. So, what would be some consideration? So, a lot of you have written about thank you notes, but what would be some of your considerations? Worried about how you're going to keep in touch with them? Would you be worried about whether or not you can keep them giving for a second year in a row? And these conversations were ones that we had at the donor relations group with a client who really did have 250,000 new donors in 1 month. So the client was the Hawaii Community Foundation. And when the Maui fires happened in August of 2023, there was an international outpouring of support for this organization and their work. And they did get 250,000 new donors overnight. So, what they asked us to do was come up with a plan to engage all of them. And mind you, these are international, across time zones and around the world. So, we had to come up with a scalable solution that would work within their team's framework and for all these donors who represent all different types of linkages and affinities for Hawaii and the Community Foundation's work. So, that's exactly what we did. And I'm going to share some learnings from that exercise with you all. So hopefully, when you get a normal amount of new donors, whatever is meaningful to you, you'll say, okay, I'm really thankful. You may get some carpal tunnel, do your stretches, get those wrists activated, but also you'll have a plan to keep them giving for year over year. Because, friends, here is the honest truth. You do? That's my bald head. But the average first time donor retention rate, according to AFP Fundraising Effectiveness Project data, is actually less than 23% now. So the average first time donor retention rate is 18% nationwide. So AFP, if you aren't familiar with the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, I would highly recommend you look at that. But we have some work to do, friends. That means more than 80% of donors who make a gift in year one do not return in year two. And so, what that means for us as fundraising professionals is that we are spending so much of our time on acquisition that we never get to a meaningful place of relationship building with our donors. And that's what makes this work fun. That's what brings joy to this work is when you get to connect with donors and see them as people and more than just people who make gifts, but as the humans behind the story. And we never get to that if we're in this constant cycle of acquisition. But there is hope because I want to draw you to that third bucket there. If you can get a donor to be a repeat donor, that means a donor in year two. Going into year three, the retention rate jumps from 18% to about 60%. So, what happens in between here and there, friends? That is the work of a donor relations professional. And that's what I'm hoping to impart with you today is how you can take a donor from year one to repeat to where they are making a transformational gift because we know that donors aren't giving at max capacity on their first try. Our friends at EverTrue, the software company, did a study and they found among their higher education clients that the average donor, they looked at a given year, and of all the first time major gift donors in that year, the average donor had been giving for more than 15 consecutive years to a particular organization before they made a major gift. And when I look at that stat, I think, oh my God, what am I going to do with all of these people for all those years? I have so much time and ground I have to cover before I can start having those major gift conversations. But that's what I'm going to share with you today because that is what we preach at the Donor Relations Group is how to build relationships that lead to meaningful transformational generosity. So what? Who cares? Well, let's look at it from cold, hard numbers. Obviously, building relationships with donors is a good thing. It leads to transformational gift opportunities, but also, friends, it's just an imperative because look at that. So on the left-hand column there, starting with 1,000 donors, if you have excellent donor retention at 80% retention, remember the national average across all segments was 46. So if you have excellent retention, you're going to be down in 5 years to a one-third of the donors that you had. But even if you hit average, you start with 1,000, but by year five, you get to 78. Oof. And we see this story repeated over and over again in national studies. Dollars are up, but donors are down. And I don't think that has to be an inevitability. I think there is work that we can do as fundraising and nonprofit professionals to really improve that list. So when we take this framework that I'm about to share with you and present it to clients, we see an average improvement rate of that first time donor rate between 5 and 10% in the first year. And so it's incremental progress over time. But remember that 10% number because Adrian Sargent, who is a nonprofit fundraising professional in the United Kingdom, he did a study that says a 10% increase in donor retention can improve the lifetime value of your database by 200%. So this adds up over time because when you work on a relationship driven model, that means prioritizing relationships over transactions. We see the lifetime value of our donors increase. And when we have more of them, that means more people are giving at greater capacity, which means more money for our bottom line. So I'm harping on it. I grew up a PK, a preacher's kid, but what I'm trying to drive home to you is that this is not only just a good thing to do, but it is smart business. So my hope is that you take one or two nuggets that you're going to hear today and apply it because this is going to impact the bottom line fundraising potential of your organization, not just next year, but down the road. So planting those trees that you may not sit under the shade, but giving them for somebody else to do so. So here's the case study with the Hawaii Community Foundation. And remember, in 1 month, they got 250,000 donors. So it was a big stress test for us. So the first thing that we did was we asked, have you been receiving these folks? And they said no. So we said, okay, well, you got to do that. And so we transitioned from paper receipts to digital receipts. For those of you that aren't doing digital receipting, I highly encourage you to investigate. At the Donor Relations Group, we advocate for receipting and thanking, two separate transactions there, receipting and thanking in the manner in which the donor gave. So if your donors give online, that means they can get an email or a text message receipt. If they give via check in the mail, then they can get a printed receipt. And what we find is when we even do that, when we say we can receipt and thank donors online if they gave online, that cuts the volume down so that you can get those important documents out the door quicker and starting a relationship faster. So that's what we did with HCF. We said, hey, you can, all of these people made gifts online because it was an online appeal, it was an online call to action. So you can receipt those people and thank them online. This is the thank you that we sent out. Look how many sentences there are. One, two, three. Three sentences. I sounded like who's the count on Sesame Street? One, ha ha ha. But there are three sentences here in this thank you. How many of your acknowledgments are longer than that? I bet most of yours are. What we find when we assess organizations' acknowledgments or thank yous is that they are far too long. Friends, it is a busy world. How many of you joyfully open your inbox in the morning and can't wait to read and thoughtfully respond to each message? Not I, said the fly. We are in a time-starved world, and our donors are no different, right? So we have to be able to be quick and effective, convey gratitude, and move on, right? That's what we need to be doing, and that's what we modeled for HCF. So after we got all of their gifts acknowledged and receipted, we said, what else are you communicating? So they said they have a newsletter that they're already using. I said, okay, well, we need to be able to put some content in that newsletter about the fire. That'll be another post-gift touch point that will help build a relationship with these donors. I know a lot of you have newsletters on the chat and on the call today. So, how are you using that vehicle? Don't just use it for spotlighting major gift contributions, whatever that may be, whatever size of gift that may be at your organization. I want you to go home, or rather log off, and look at what are the areas of support at your organization that receive the most gifts in terms of number of gifts. Look at the funds or accounts that have the greatest number of gifts. And then I want you to start working that into your existing newsletter communication. You can call it Your Gifts at Work. You can call it Fund Impact Spotlight. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But start working that in. Don't just focus on the major gifts or the exciting grants or these transformational opportunities. Let your average donor see their impact in that newsletter because that's a good way. Penelope Burke, author of Donor Centered Fundraising, said that 93% of donors would be likely or very likely to give if they got two things. So, Penelope Burke, Donor Centered Fundraising. Two things. Here's the secret to donor retention: a prompt and personal thank you for the gift that was followed up with later by a report on how the gift was utilized. So if you do nothing else to retain your donors, thank them promptly and personally, and follow up with a report later. What we find is, as consultants, when we tell people that stat, they say, "Oh, I couldn't possibly write reports for all of my donors." Right. But if you do what I just said and look at the number of funds that have the most donors to them, you can get close to 80%, which is kind of our golden rule. So 80% of your donors should be receiving some sort of impact communication. But if you use your newsletter and existing communications thoughtfully, you can start seeding those communications with impact. So a donor says, "Oh, I gave to the Director's Fund for Excellence. Oh, this is the story about that. I see how that gift is making a difference." Rebecca, how soon? At all, the answer, and this is so annoying, but I'm going to say it, is it depends. But we advocate typically for within 6 months. So I'll show you a tentative donor journey in a minute, but around 6 months is when we typically advocate for the report because you have to spend the money first before you can report on it. So if you report on how your gift was utilized too soon, it's like, well, I don't really believe that they used that gift because how could you possibly? I mean, y'all, how many work orders and board meetings does it take to get a new printer in your offices? How many grants do you have to write to get one? Okay. So I don't believe that you're spending all of the donor's money the following month, right? It takes some time. So that's what we say about 6 months, because that could be a reasonable expectation that you would have spent the gift. Again, I'll show you a sample donor journey or a sample communications cadence post gift that will have that worked in, but 6 months is usually what we recommend. So here is another news update that we sent from HCF. This was sent in January of 2024. Remember, the fires and all the outpouring happened in August. So we sent another impact communication in the new year, and it started off with gratitude, but also said, look at that second paragraph. You will be hearing more stories of the impact you're making. So it's setting up the expectation that we are going to be following up with impact. So many times, donors don't understand that we want to be in relationship with them, right? We want to hear from them. We want to provide updates. So we always advocate for, if you're starting out a program of reporting impact, saying you're going to do it, right? Gives donors something to look forward to and sets the expectation that you're going to be in touch with them more than just asking for money. I can't tell you how many times I heard that when I was working in frontline fundraising. I'm sure y'all hear it too. You only talk to me when you want my money. But hopefully, some of these tools and tricks and templates will help dispel that and prevent that from happening to you further. Obviously, it's going to happen some, but less. So we also advocated for a survey. So we created a little survey for these folks because we got 250,000 donors over a month. We didn't know hardly anything about them. So we had them take a survey. And a survey is not a magical tool, but I feel like it's underutilized as a form of engagement. We define donor engagement at the Donor Relations Group as asking donors to do something for you other than making a gift. So engagement equals asking, not money, to break it down really simply. So a survey is a great way to do that because really, what is the most valuable asset we own is our time. So we asked these donors how often they wanted to hear from us, what vehicle or method that they wanted to hear from us, and the type of content they wanted to hear from us. So it was like 5 questions max, y'all. Because any more than that, it becomes one of those collegiate, and I'm looking at Brittany through my screen, collegiate alumni engagement surveys that are 40 questions long, and they say may take 10 to 15 minutes. There was a study done with SurveyMonkey, the platform that does surveying, and what they found is that donors are willing to budget a finite or limited time to completing a survey, and the more questions you ask, the less time they take on each question that follows, right? So donors mentally are saying, I'm gonna give 3 minutes 5 minutes. So you get my attention for 5 minutes worth of that. And then I start hitting the click, start hitting the forward button because I'm getting antsy to get this thing finished. So we asked 5 short questions to get to know these donors. Again, something other than asking them for money. This is what the survey looked like. Y'all, how satisfied are you? Topics you're most interested in, how often, and then we had the method, and I think we had one more question in there maybe. This is all we asked. And notice that we only asked what we could deliver. Would be a lot to do a weekly update, but we felt that we could. So don't survey things you're not able to commit to. If you're thinking, I'm going to give quarterly at best, great. Then that's your update, right? That's what you can commit to. But what we found, probably counterintuitive, is that most donors said they wanted to hear monthly updates. So that was really great data for us to say is, okay, so and as part of our post gift communication journey or plan, we should have a monthly touch point for these donors. Sometimes that can be as simple as it's National X Day, and we are thanking our supporters, right? So if you work in hunger relief, it's National Food Pantry Day. Or as we sit around Thanksgiving tables laden with food, we are so grateful for you for providing support for those in our community that struggle with food insecurity. So those can be timely updates, but that's a monthly update. That isn't something asking for money, right? So monthly was what this particular group of donors wanted, and they wanted it via email, which we were grateful for because this particular organization didn't have the budget, and I imagine a lot of you don't either, to send out monthly print communications. But monthly quick email touch points, yeah, we can do that. So because we had that monthly data, we actually started a series. You don't have to do this, but this is what we decided is we wanted to teach them more about the values of the Hawaii Community Foundation. So we spelled out an acrostic for Aloha that spelled out the values of the Hawaii Community Foundation, and we tied that into their support. So throughout this series, we've explored the 5 values that guide us in Aloha, and your support is part of that, right? So we're tying that in together, teaching them more about the Hawaii Community Foundation, teaching them about how their support aligns with our organizational values, and how we are still thinking, using appreciative for their support. So applying this to your context, what if you gave donors an education series about you and your work and what you are accomplishing and how that ties in? So you may not have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values that nicely spell aloha, which of course means love, but you don't have to do that. You could say, dear Brittany, thank you for your support of our animal shelter. We are able to sponsor these programs because of you, and we look forward to giving you a short update each month about how your donation is making a difference in these particular programs, or hearing from grateful clients or patients or beneficiaries that are making a difference. We look forward to providing you with those type of updates. So simple ways to not only engage with your donors, but to get them to understand more about you, your mission, and more importantly, key is how that aligns together. How my support is achieving the overall mission. And it doesn't have to be these long, lengthy emails. We advocate for short, snack-sized bites rather than buffet emails. How many of you eat a buffet luncheon every day? No. We do that a couple times. We do that for big holidays when we're in the mood, right? So that doesn't mean you shouldn't send those really hearty emails. You just got to mix it up because having a buffet luncheon every day is a recipe for a gut ache and weight gain. But having little snack emails, I can manage that. It's more likely that your content, which I know you take so much time to create, gets read. So another way to use this concept is I know every one of you does an annual report of some fashion and capacity. What if you broke down that annual report and sent it in a bi-monthly or every other month email. Ding. You have the content. I guarantee people are going to be able to understand and read more because it's not this big, long document. You already have the content. One of our principles at Donor Relations Group is to core, CORE, create once, reuse everywhere. So, how can you core your existing content into little snacks? So, if you do a story on one of your staff members or team members in your annual report and they get an award, send the email that says, Colton got this really cool award. Here's more about Colton and his work with our Home for Helpers program from your annual report, right? Getting that beautiful document that I know you all take so much time and pride in, some more airtime is going to be helpful. And again, creates more engagement points. So send the full thing once, but also refresh and revisit that content because people are busy. We digest so much information every day. It won't seem like you're coming back with the same story, particularly if you can make it fresh and new with a little bitty update and a link to the original article. So that's kind of what we advocate for here and what HCF really latched onto as well. So remember that magical 6 months of an impact report. That's what we did. We did a 6-month report and we emailed it to everyone that we had email addresses for. And we sent a postcard with a URL link for those that we didn't have an email address for or that we had a bounce email from. So this is something that I absolutely advocate for nonprofits of all sizes and varieties to do is start doing some digital reporting. It doesn't have to be this fancy document. It could be something as simple as a link to a box folder and a PDF file. Yes, there are lots of beautiful tools. Email me if you're curious about some of them. I'm happy to recommend. But even a PDF that lives in a Google Drive that you can access through an email link is a huge resource to you because it's so expensive to do print. And what we find too is that if you have to make an update, how are you going to do that when it's already out there in the world, right? It allows you to create those updates as well. So this is the front cover of that postcard we sent. So this is the email. This is the postcard front cover. And look, y'all, this is the back cover. Little snacky tidbits and a link to learn more. And of course, when we provide a QR code, we get that data of how many people scanned it and visited it. So we were able to say, look, yes, this cost some money. This was an investment, but look at how many people were able to read this report. So think about your organization's annual report or just an impact on a particular fund. Come up with a few stats, scan to learn more, even if that just leads to a hosted file on a shared drive or an unlisted URL on your website. You'll want to have that session data. So if you host it unlisted on your website, theoretically every session that you have or every user that clicks was driven there because of your impact report mailing. So you're able to track that and report back on that to your board or otherwise, or just even using it for your own program planning purposes. Here's another update that we send y'all. You got to keep sending it because of you and the thousands of other generous people. Here's an exciting update that we had. So we actually hosted a webinar as well with the organization's leadership. So this was a really low cost opportunity and we set it up on Zoom, kind of like we're doing here today. And they had a presentation and they could submit questions ahead of time. We turned off everybody's mics. We turned off, camera ability. This isn't like a town hall, but we allowed them to submit questions in advance and we answered some of them. And we said, I'm going to start reading names. Suzanne writes, here's her question. And what do you have to say to that? And they were provided an opportunity to answer those questions. So it was a really cost-effective way to get people across space and time. I'm thinking of that Journey song, Through Space and Time, but we can do that now when we have these tools, and it doesn't have to be this fancy meeting platform. Turn off all Mike's ability on your Zoom meeting and have your program team come together with a moderated Q&A. It doesn't have to be your executive director or your vice president for philanthropy that's the host either. What if you had a really engaging board member? You got a local TV anchor to moderate a discussion about it, right? You can get other people involved. And in that way, the focus of this is how are my gifts making a difference? How are my gifts funding the organization's mission? And how can I share that with people? So this was an engagement opportunity. I asked you to attend a webinar, not give money, don't ask again. I asked you to attend a webinar and I taught or spoke a little bit more about how gifts are making a difference and gave you the opportunity to ask questions of me, of my leadership team. So truly valuable opportunity, super low cost. The emails, invitations were emails, Zoom registration. We did upgrade this particular client to the Zoom webinars, but again, doesn't have to be like that. That link could lead to a Google form, and you start mailing out the URL, kind of like how Brittany does registration for these. Doesn't have to be big, fancy. So here's some lessons after all of that. We started with digital receipting is a must. And again, if you are paper only receipts, I would really encourage you to investigate digital. Remember, those who give online are used to transacting online so they can give a paper receipt. Our founder and principal, Lynn Wester, always likes to highlight that you can't even paper file your taxes anymore. Everything is an e-file. So digital receipts are 100% compliant with IRS directives. If you start with nothing else, remember that Penelope Burt quote, donors are 93% likely or very likely to give another gift if they get a prompt and personal thank you, followed by a report later. So we have to do a receipt because that's just IRS requirement for gifts of $250 or more, blah, blah, blah. But we also have to thank. And then we have to report on the impact, maybe 6 months or so after, but theoretically, as soon as you've spent the gift. Every donor needs impact reporting. So think about how you can use your existing channels of communication to share impact. My little tip for you is to look at your funds or programs or initiatives that have the most number of donors and start working a fund update or initiative or program update in your existing communications calendar. You don't necessarily have to go and create a brand new donor newsletter, but how can you start seeding your existing communications with some of those impact updates? And then ultimately, and this is, kind of a kumbaya moment, when we were able to see just the power of generosity firsthand. I mean, y'all, we had donors from all over the world, and some, yes, gave $10, but some gave hundreds of thousands and expected so little in return. So it's truly that honor and privilege, but it was also smart business because HCF, the Hawaii Community Foundation, they knew or they were aware that they didn't want these donors to go away. So the average disaster donor retention, right? Average people that say there was a flood or a fire or a mudslide, average retention of that is less than 1%. So what did we do at HCF? We doubled it. We got to 2%, and you're thinking 2%, but we doubled it, right? So imagine if you can take retention that's at a better rate anyway. Imagine if you could take that first time donor retention from 18 to 28 or 18 to 36, right? You start to get more appreciable results because other populations have better ways to do that. Yeah, Michelle, I'll send you a note. And Brittany, if you don't mind, you send me the meeting chat. I'll be happy to take all of that feedback and give you a few tips and tricks. Sometimes, just as a little hint, it may not be as slick and automated as you want it to be. I've worked with organizations, Indianapolis Men's Chorus, shout out, where we would just send a templated email in constant contact with a mail merge field, right? May not be as slick, but we could run a report on it, and it was more time saving than sending out those letters and doing all of that. So, yep, I'll give you a few tips. So, for those of us who live in normal acquisition land, what are some additional tips and tricks, right? I always tell people, and for those of you who have worked or do work in education, the extreme example is always the easiest teaching example. So you're thinking, I only see like 5 or 10 new donors every month or year or whatever. What are some things that I can do to improve that retention as well? Yes, I'm here for you. So this is again, I'm going to share these slides with Brittany when we're done here, but this is a little posted link on our website that will show you the rule of seven. Some of you may be familiar with this, but research and conversations with donors time and again has proven that donors expect to be thanked 7 times from gift one to being asked for gift two. And every time I share that, inevitably, I get, a fainting reaction. I see frowny emojis pop up in my chat. I see people start going when I do it live. But we broke it down for you on our website with this article here. But think about what I told you and showed you for the Hawaii Community Foundation. We have a receipt, okay? We have a thank you. Those are two separate documents. I'll get to that in my next slide. We have a receipt, we have a thank you. We have a newsletter. We have an impact report. We have probably you're going to do a holiday card. You may invite donors to a reception, right? I'm already at 6. So you're doing these things. It doesn't have to be thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela. You don't have to keep saying that over and over again, but continually expressing gratitude, showing impact, recognizing generosity. Those are those types of 7 touch points that donors are looking for and kind of expecting. So you can do that. And again, this article on our donor relations website will outline some of examples of those touch points. Here is a first-time donor communications timeline or journey. So remember, I worked in that for you. So a receipt, we want to send those again. This is all best practices. If you're not close to 72 hours for receipting, don't tune out. I beg you. Don't tune out. If you're doing 7 days, could you streamline it to get to 5? Right, incremental improvement. The idea here is that we lived in an instant world. Sometimes I can't even close my browser on Amazon after making a purchase before I already have a confirmation in my email that I did it, right? So we're living in a fast-paced world, so we need to be prompt within reason, right? So if you are saying, Colton, there's no way I can get receipts out in 72 hours, okay, find out where you are, reduce that by 10% within a year, and then maybe next year you go for another 10% time reduction. Incremental improvement is always what we're advocating for. So a receipt should go out within 72 hours. An acknowledgement, which is a separate communication from a receipt. An acknowledgement is nothing more, nothing less than a heartfelt, genuine thank you. We're talking 3 to 5 sentences made in the method that the donor made their gift, right? So if they gave online, they can get an email, thank you. If they gave via direct mail, they can get something as simple as a postcard with a handwritten note at the bottom of it. That should be sent within 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks. Penelope Burke, I quote her a lot. We love her. Penelope Burke said that donors consider prompt to be anything within 2 weeks or less. Latanya, yep, I will send that to you as well, Latanya. Yep. So donors consider prompt to be within 2 weeks. So if you're kind of getting outside of 2 weeks, that's late in a donor's mind. Penelope Burke has surveyed, according to her research and estimations, more than 250,000 donors over 30 years, and she continually finds that 2 weeks is considered the prompt mark. She also found, if you need a little bit of ammunition for your board, she also found that If donors receive late thank yous, they are 31% less likely to give a subsequent gift. And the thought behind that was when she did focus groups, that donors are worried if you can't get a thank you out in 2 weeks, does that reflect something else in your organization, inefficiency, operational hurdles, challenges? So a 2 week marker is that promptness test, but also, do they have their act together? Is this a well-run shop, right? I know, you know, everyone on the call knows that there are reasons why these things get pushed beyond 2 weeks that have nothing to do with your operational efficiencies, but giving a gift is an act of trust. And we can start to build trust by making things prompt and personal. And that starts with the thank you. So for this first donor journey or timeline or calendar, a postcard 30 days after, that could, I'll show you some examples of that. That's as easy as thank you for joining I saw one, Rainbow Omega Shelter family. I probably got that wrong. Sorry. But thank you for joining Organization A family of supporters. And why we do that at 30 days, friends, is what happens monthly. My credit card bill comes back. So we try to do a monthly touch point because in theory, they may be paying a credit card bill. So we try to honor that when they may be paying their bills. My friend that asked about an impact report, this one for first-time donors says approximately 11 months after the gift, they would get an impact report. Again, it's not magic here. These are just some examples. 6 months, they would get something like a video update or even just another program update. Maybe they get that newsletter feature or a recycled annual report feature with some fresh language attached to it. And then at 12 months, and only at 12 months, do they get a renewal solicitation. So all of this is incumbent upon you removing first-time donors from active solicitation pools until 1 year of giving. And I pause here and give a pastoral emphasis because I know a lot of us re-solicit donors every single time. They do not remove or segment current donors from our appeals. If you do nothing else from this conversation, take out current donors from additional requests for additional money. If they've made a gift within, I know some people are really hard at this, 9 months, right? Because like, I don't want them to lapse. Okay, 9 months. Give me 9. Give me 10. I sound like an auction caller. But if you can do that, that will automatically increase your retention rate. The AFP Fundraising Effectiveness Project did a survey of, I think, more than 1 million American donors. And what they found was when they were asked why you stopped giving, the number one request or complaint was that they got over solicited. They were asked too much for making additional gifts. So all of this work is lovely, but I hate to say it's for naught, but it is definitely not as impactful or meaningful if you solicit donors every single time, even though they've just already made a gift. So remove them out and watch your retention flourish. Remove donors from solicitations and put them on this little journey or calendar or timeline and watch them engage with you rather than constantly being on the lookout for that solicitation. This is me clicking my inbox, rearing back, right? Don't let them be always on the alert for a solicitation. Let them see some of your organizational updates and impact. Tax receipts and acknowledgments, I hinted and said it would come, but it finally is here. They are separate documents. So just for clarity, an acknowledgement is a thank you note. You don't write a thank you note for, and I know I'm talking to a lot of Southern people, so I am in a thank you note crowd. I appreciate that y'all had mamas, memas, neenies, gam-gams that taught you how to write thank you notes. And kind of expected one too, if I'm really honest. But you did not write, Dear Nini, thank you so much for my Cabbage Patch doll valued at $19.99, purchased at Piggly Wiggly. Is that Southern? Oh God. Food Lion on this particular date and market value this. right? That's not how we thank people in a relationship-driven way. So when we write thank you notes, when we write acknowledgments, don't put the dollar value in. Let that be an opportunity for you to thank the donor for being a generous person, for being the type of person that steps up and makes contributions when asked. Tax receipt has to have the dollar amount. It should also have a genuine thank you. We have to have that good verbiage there for the IRS about goods and services. We know that, right? But a thank you note should be as meaningful as something you would communicate to a family member, a loved one, a wedding gift, a baby shower gift, right? That's kind of the tone that we're going for. And so often, it's this really reserved tone, this elevated posture of your support continues our legacy of excellence. So that's not how we talk to people, right? How do you talk to them as human beings? It's not just people who write checks. That's the difference between a tax receipt and acknowledgement. One is a transactional document, the other is a relationship building tool. So here are some additional first-time donor journeys. If you're thinking, Colton, I don't even send out anything other than a receipt and maybe a newsletter. I hear you. What if you took each of these touch points and adopted them as you are able to create more than one touch point before they get asked again, right? So if you're saying, Colton, I am barely getting receipts out and maybe a newsletter. Right. What if you added a thank you call? This is a great board activity. And actually, Penelope Burke, Donor Centered Fundraising, for the fifth mention, she found that these calls were incredibly effective, particularly if they were done by volunteers. So, your next board meeting, what if you ended 15 minutes early and had each of your board members call a few donors? This is an incredibly impactful use of their time. And what Penelope Burke found is that voicemails are just as effective. Because y'all, I got a telemarketer call and it says, Josh from loan processing has been trying to get in touch with me. No, as a robocall. But people don't pick up numbers that they don't know. Penelope Burke says it makes no difference in the impact if you leave a voicemail. So think about how you can even incorporate one or two of these touch points into your donor communication strategy post thank you, a survey, a text. There are programs that text. Some of them are not even that expensive. But again, how can you create additional touch points from solicitation to next solicitation? If you're at 2, can you get to 3? If you're at 3, can you get to 4, right? We're all about incremental improvements because each step will bring you closer to that rule of 7, and each step will incrementally, and I really do believe automatically improve your donor retention rate. Listen, at the very least, you're going to dispel those, I never hear from you unless you ask me for money feedback that are so lovely to receive. Here's another example of a timeline. Again, this is what works for these particular organizations. This was a higher ed athletics program. If this doesn't work for you, if this is not doable, take the touch point, apply it for a framework that is, and let yourself be proud that you are asking and providing space for donors to be thanked, to learn about their impact, and to feel gratitude before they're asked again. This is a first-time donor postcard example, and it just says, look how powerful. You gave, we noticed. This is from STARS, which is a Canadian air ambulance service. And this is the inside of that mailer. You help us save lives. Your donation helps ensure STARS is there for everyone. You connect patients to critical care logistics. You. This is a beautiful way to talk to donors, but also a good way for them to see the impact of their giving. So imagine if this was that 30-day touch point and it says, Dear Mindy, thank you for joining the organization family of donors. Your donation helps us do this. Your donation changes lives in our community. Your donation, whatever. What a lovely thing to say. Catilla, we do advocate that these should be 2 separate mailings simply for the fact that receipts and acknowledgments can be 2 separate touch points. So I know people fret sometimes over the cost of postage. Great. Do one post, do one digital. Do one post, do one board thank you call, right? Just give them two separate touch points so that way they're reminded again that they made the gift, y'all. Because listen, some people, they don't even remember that they made a gift. So again, some of this is just like reinforcing the fact that yes, you made a gift and we still notice, we still remember. Here's an example of a first-time donor postcard from the YMCA of Harris County. This is, there are so many firsts, this postcard says, that shape who we are, and your gift to the YMCA of Greater Charlotte. Oops, wrong YMCA. We've done a few. Is no different. Your generosity is shaping the lives. So great way to talk to donors and a great way to say, hey, you joined our donor family. If you don't have capacity to do a first-time donor journey, what if you just adopted this as a donor thank you postcard? Put some lovely images, swiped some of the beautiful text here, and just said, thanks for being part of our donor family. Again, take what I'm giving you and apply it to your organization size and bandwidth. Another example here of a first-time donor. Again, if you're saying, I don't have the bandwidth, copy and steal this postcard. Just say, thanks, donors. During the month of November, our thoughts turn to you, our grateful supporters. Thanks for being part of our community of support. Another example, this is CASA. This is that Tarrant County example. Um, this is particularly lovely because it adds a little thank you underneath. If you're saying, Colton, I struggle to keep up with the acknowledgments, you can do an acknowledgement postcard like this. Have your board or your staff members write a handwritten note at the bottom, slap that thing in the mail. Super meaningful for donors to receive. Gets out the door, maybe within that 2-week time frame. So if this is a little trick to help you get your stuff out the door, please take it. ThankView is a wonderful tool to share videos. It's a little bit more of an investment, but if you click that link, it'll take you to a video page. You can learn more about how to use video. But if you have a YouTube channel, imagine if you got an email. This is one from a university. Imagine if you got an email that says, Dear Colton, we're thinking of you today. We just wanted to take a special moment to share our appreciation. Click an unlisted YouTube video link, watch it roll. You're thinking of me. Wow, that's so neat. So, some key takeaways are, again, first-time donors are essential because you can't get to loyal donors without passing through the gate of the first-time donors. So take whatever examples I've given you and find ways to work them within your organization's framework. If you don't know what your donors want, you can ask them. Remember, engagement means asking donors for something other than giving money. Sign a petition, learn hands-free CPR, put a teal pumpkin out for trick-or-treaters this Halloween. I mean, whatever you're asking, as long as it's not asking for money, that's engagement. That's super meaningful to donors. And you must communicate impact. Every donor expects it, and younger donors in particular require it. They'll stop giving if they don't get those impact updates. I have some free resources for you from the donor relations group. If you liked what you're hearing, some of the feedback and thoughts I have, I highly encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. This QR code will take you to that particular landing page. I would also love your feedback, so it helps me tailor this. So scan a QR code or go to the URL directed. I would love to hear what was salient for you, how I did, how I can make it better. We're all about serving donors at DRG, and we want to make sure that we're meeting your expectations. So with that, I have just a few moments for questions. Brittany, I ran a little long, but I got excited about candy corn and answering questions. So happy to answer questions. Raylene, I see your comment. I am going to respond to all of them in the chat log. Another meeting, Regina, thank you for your kind words. Again, if you haven't taken the survey or haven't jotted that down, I would love for you to do so. Zelma, converting volunteers into donors. Send me an email, Zelma. I would be happy to. This is my email, friends. It's colton@donorrelations.com. And I will happily answer some of those one-off questions for you. Converting volunteers for donors is a beautiful strategy. We know that it's a huge untapped potential, and Giving USA says that donors are much more likely than the average public to make a gift. So I would love to talk with you more about that. Um, Elisa, thank you. Angela, thank you. Zelma, thank you guys so much. And thank you to everybody. I know that you are all pressed for time. You are all carrying the world on your shoulders. So it means so much to me that you would take time to improve yourself. I want to thank Brittany and the Carey Center at Auburn University for extending the invitation for me to get up and do my little spiel and soapbox on you a little bit about the importance of donor retention. But again, my email door is open, colton@donorrelations.com. Would love to hear from you, and I wish you all the best in your incredibly important work. We'll be sharing the slides after, and Brittany is going to share the chat log so I can follow up with you individually. So take care, everyone. Thank you again.
Colton, thank you so much for that inspiring program. For everyone joining us today, keep an eye out for an email from me. I'll have a link for the presentation recording, a quick 3-question survey, and an opportunity to sign up as a Carey Center nonprofit affiliate if you are not already one. Our nonprofit affiliate program now serves more than 425 nonprofits across Alabama and beyond, and it's a great way to access educational programs, professional development, and networking opportunities, and membership is completely free. Affiliates are always the first to know about our upcoming events. We're also excited to share information about the Carey Center Nonprofit Professional Certificate. This is an online, non-degreed certificate developed in partnership with the Auburn University Office of Professional and Continuing Education and Merit Nonprofit Professional Development. Merit is an anywhere, anytime microlearning platform that helps nonprofit professionals strengthen 6 key areas, including leading, learning, resource generating, planning, managing, and overseeing. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at one of our monthly virtual programs or in person when our nonprofit training series comes to your part of the state.
Bye, everybody. Take good care.